Welcome back, investor. We have another passive income adventure today with Jermaine E. He is the founder of something I know you all need, but probably none of you are actually doing. It's called HeirLight, and it is an estate planning tool. And one of the reasons I wanted to have Jermaine on is because I feel like as I've been working with accredited investors, raising capital over the last several years, as investors become more wealthy and become financially free, they tend to think more about like philanthropy, family planning, asset protection, and estate planning to make sure that their families are taken care of, like that legacy wealth. But they also just spend more time volunteering, becoming better grandparents, whatever it is, starting a big nonprofit. I find that this army of philanthropists thing that our investors are kind of building really empowers me to help people who are kind of in this early stage of wealth management. Maybe you grew up in a good family, but it wasn't something that you talked about a lot. And then I know when my own father passed away, he just did his own trust on LegalZoom, and then he didn't actually deed any of his assets into the trust. So I was like, why do we even have this? So these types of pitfalls that he was at the time of when he passed, he was an accredited investor and just still couldn't really get his head wrapped around that you have to spend some money and some time and some resources to be able to do this properly. And so Jermaine is going to come in today and walk us through. Yeah, welcome, Jermaine. Your product, your technique. Who needs this? Why people are not doing it or not doing it correctly, like in the case of our own family, and just get us educated about this because it's one of those things that we all know we need to do, but a lot of us just don't know exactly where to start.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Emma. Happy to be here today. So, yeah, I think one of the challenges of estate planning is that it's legal, which means all 50 states are different, and
Yep.
people's circumstances are different. Anyone out there really giving general advice is typically doing it wrong because how do you give general advice to something that is so personal, right?
Usually.
And that's really what set me off this journey, which is I just realized that 70% of Americans don't have a will. And let's just include a trust in it. And if you
Mhm.
know what the difference between a will and a trust is, you should probably talk to an attorney.
Yeah.
That means you have a little bit of sophistication, you have a little bit of access to knowledge. And, these days we all do. But I think let's just break it down really quickly. Like in the US, estate planning really is just about four things: naming who makes your decisions when you can't, who
Right.
gets your assets when you're not here, and then protecting the people or the things that you're responsible for. And then I think the most important thing where we tie it together is just like, how do you communicate that in a way that respects what you want while you're alive as well as while you're gone? And
Yeah.
so that's in essence what it is.
Yeah. That's actually like a little great nutshell framework there of those four things that people need to be thinking about. Before you kind of describe to us what Airlight does, I know this is very mission driven for you. Kind of walk us through your background a little bit about your area of expertise, like the experiences that you've had up until this point, and then the kind of the pivot point that got you to be like, this needs to this needs to get taken care of.
Well, how long is this podcast?
Well,
Well,
perfect.
I
Well,
started
40 minutes, so have at
yeah,
it.
yeah. No, I went to university in LA, and when I was at USC, that's when Snapchat started. So all of my friends were all very tech forward. We're all thinking about AR and VR and things like that. And so while in university, I started essentially an agency. At the time, we didn't call it that. We tried to build tech around it, but we help
Mhm.
brands create branded filters,
Okay.
geotag branded filters, and ran that for a while as an agency, did a lot of creative work, and then went on uh, around 2016 after the election. I thought it feels like in this country, there's a lack of empathy. Like people on all sides are not really understanding each other. We're talking, but we're kind of talking over each other. And I just felt this calling of like, I can't spend the rest of my life selling ads essentially. And so I
Yeah.
wanted to go into something more meaningful. And so I cold emailed the treasurer of California at the time and I got a job with him. So, uh, ironically or coincidentally, the treasurer of California is the state's banker. So he's the one that's like responsible to take the state's revenue and figure out how to grow it, whether it's to issue bonds or things like that. And so it was super fun, as a bright-eyed kid going into all these meetings and sitting there being a fly on the wall. I learned so much about how the world works. worked, and it's still constantly evolving.
Mhm.
And then at some point, after that, I moved to New York and I had an ed tech company. We wanted to help children who could not focus develop their frontal cortex a little bit stronger. So I had met this woman who, at the time and still is today, the world best mental mathematician. And what we did was we hooked her brain up to an MRI at Stanford, studied the waves, the neurons, and things like that, and created a curriculum where we can teach kids how to use audio, visual, and tactile methods to enhance their frontal cortex, which then informs their ability to stay focused as well
Mhm.
as make executive decisions.
Yes. Yeah. Oh,
And then
yeah,
I'm
very
gonna go one more step
yeah.
to my next thing. I had a stint in executive search, primarily focusing on venture-backed and private equity companies. Uh,
Mhm.
the reason why I got into it actually is probably super relatable to a lot of the audience here, which is I always thought that money and ideas are the thing that's going to build great businesses. And I met this very, very good recruiter. His name's Todd Gitlin, and he had a chat with me. I was bound to go into venture capital, and we talked about how there's ideas are everywhere, capital is also everywhere, and the people who actually understand and know how to build a team around the ideas and to bring the capital in are the
Yes.
ones that are always the ones that are very successful. And so I thought, well, what better way to learn about talent than to go work for someone who's excellent at it? And so I spent about a year and a half doing that.
Mhm.
And somewhere along the line, I started a logistics business with my mom because I wanted to spend more time with her.
Mhm.
And that business became a freight forwarding company that's a free cash flow positive EBITDA company. Nothing fancy, but very, very healthy business to have. And then 6 months ago, my mom passed away. So it got me thinking a lot about estate planning, about all the things that we as a family, I think we're pretty sophisticated in the sense of like, we have legal structures to do our tax properly. I do QSBS for my businesses. I know all these things, but the conversation that we miss out on are the conversation that really matters, which is if you don't know, if you don't have clarity of where you are today and what is enough, then how could you possibly know, like, when do you stop and what you're earning for? And
Yeah.
so all that leads to the mission of HeirLight.
Yeah. It reminds me so much of my dad. He was a math teacher for several years and became a software developer. I think his first job as a software developer was in 1967. I remember was going through his old paperwork after he passed away, and I was like, "Not worth. Did we have computers in 1967? Like, what was he programming?" Right? And so it was kind of this incredible um, career. He actually mailed me a book one time about how to do mental math because I was homeschooling my kids, and he wanted me to be able to teach them how to do this kind of stuff in their heads. Benjamin, what was his name? It came across that and he sent us to human calculator. And so somebody like that, okay, at the end of his life, our family home, he turned it into a rental. And so he was now an accredited investor between all of his investments and this in our home and still was trying to pinch pennies to do his estate plan on LegalZoom. And I think that so many people, because like, he's very handy, very DIY. He programmed computers with a piece of paper. He built all of our houses himself. He grew up on a farm. Just that kind of guy who just thought that like, hey, the tools are out here. We can do this, right? And he just didn't kind of have the support he needed to do it right. And you probably have found in your own experience now that you're going through this yourself on the receiving end. Really understanding what it is that families out there need to be able to do this correctly. And tools are better than ever, like more affordable than ever. And you're opening the doorway for that. So tell me a little bit about what you do and how that's kind of a mission driven thing for you because you're serial founder and this is your new baby. So I would love to hear like how your baby helps people and why this particular company has become your baby.
Yeah, so a conversation with my mom and my dad about retirement made me realize that it's not that they don't have the resources to plan out their retirement, but it's this like lack of clarity and this like pushing off the conversation into a later date that gives them this like underlying let's say the fear of running out of money before you die. And I think
Yeah.
maybe that's a very immigrant thing. We came from a family that started at serving tables in Oklahoma in like the late 80s into,
Mhm.
we're now living in California and we're pretty comfortable and and we're grateful for everything we have. But I think that fear that we've had since those days is kind of it runs in the family. And so what I realized is that it's not really like a lack of tools or lack of information because it's all out there. But it's just that, some of our users tell us that, we ask them like anonymously in the app and say, hey, why haven't you talked to somebody? Like, if you're not talking to our chatbot, who would you be talking to? And
Mhm.
something I realize is that, people think at a certain age, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, they all think the same thing, which is at my age, I'm supposed to know what an executor is. I'm supposed to know
Yeah.
what a durable power of attorney is. And maybe it's the ego, maybe it's, just easier not to confront it with a human. So they all put it
Mm.
off. And
Yeah.
so I think why things work right now, it's because we're finally at a place where technology allows us to build an app like this. We guardrailed against the probate code. So we're not quite like ChatGPT where it always gives you a positive affirmation answer that
Mhm.
solves a problem. We will push back and say, hey, based on your conditions, these are the best practices. And we can't give you legal advice, but we present you the options contextual to who you are as a person and what you have. And so our app really is built for the 70% of Americans that have been thinking, I know I need to have a will, but for one reason or another, I haven't done it yet.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, and like you mentioned, like, what's the difference between a will and a trust? What's the difference between a living trust, a revocable and irrevocable? Like, all of these things, I think that there is even ego with me. Like, we need to redo all of this. It's been about 8 years since we've done it, and our financial situation has changed dramatically since we first set this up. And it's something that needs to be revisited every so often as your financial situation or your family situation changes. And I'm finding myself reluctant to go to my professional advisors and really open up my books, really open up like our entire portfolio so they can see exactly what we're doing because because of I never really thought about it this way, but there's a little bit of ego there. It's like, are we doing well? I feel like we're doing well. Are we actually doing well? I don't know. Sometimes it feels like we're not doing well. Like it's all about that. And plus it's like, how much is this going to cost? Because while we could pay for it, I don't want to. Like, I don't want to spend money on that. I could go take the kids to Hawaii for that same kind of thing. And so there's this, there's this huge reluctance of people to do it. And then I know like my mom, she died when she was kinda young. She didn't wanna talk about it because she was young, and she didn't even want it because she felt like admitting that she was seriously ill would mean that she would die. It's like that mind over matter type of placebo effect. She really felt like she had to focus on staying alive, and so this was just not a topic that she could discuss because of her medical problem, and so it's just all sorts of reasons why people stay away from it, right? The mindset is important, but, like, how do you help them, like, get over that hump?
Yeah, and that is our mission. Our mission, we started out thinking clarity is love in a practical form.
Okay.
That's Airlight's entire mission. We're trying to
Okay.
help people gain clarity. We're trying to tell people that, clarity comes first from knowing yourself
Okay.
and then choosing your values and then just living a life that reflects them. And I think that goes hand in hand with investing. Like a lot of the things that I invested in myself are actually mostly founders who just reflect the values that I have. And
Yes.
so, and it's really the same way I'm approaching investors too. Short of family and friends of people that I know who, kind of want to get in and just support me. I also am like just really cautious about who we let in because when it comes to estate planning, like I see a lot of the pathways that companies like mine would take, which is somewhere along the line when you have X amount of users, an insurance company would come and just say, I like his book of business and his data. Let me just offer them something and buy it all out because it
Mhm.
makes the insurance company, essentially lead acquisition works really well. But at the same time, if like I don't have investors, no pressure of a horizon to sell, then I can keep building the tools that I believe will help people bring clarity into their lives.
Yes, so you're not just looking for this rapid exit, exit rich type of scenario, you have other businesses and other streams of income this is exactly what the show is about. It may not be necessarily passive, but you have some investments that are passive. You have some businesses that are active. But this is exactly what I mean is like you become kind of financially free and start to think a little bit like, what is my mission? What am I here? How can I help people? Like, what's a big need that's missing in the marketplace? And that's exactly what I feel like accredited investors, the kind of that new, like, it just got to $1 million, 1 to 5 million. And there are all these things that their parents didn't have to do. They didn't see modeled and they didn't know this was a thing. Whether they came from poverty or they came from middle class, it's just people just don't know about it. And you're able to kind of follow this passion and this mission, which I think, is exactly the point of the show. You're kind of the embodiment of that.
Yeah, I think, a lot of us, we inherit our beliefs about money and success or safety and all this responsibility that we have for
Mhm.
ourselves and the people around us without realizing it. So, like for better or worse, like our parents, our culture, the survival mode, those things quietly become our operating system, for lack of a better
Mhm.
word. And I think the danger isn't that we have bad values. I think the danger in this is that as our lives evolve and we accumulate a little bit more comfort in our lives, that we don't question these assumptions, right? We
Mhm.
don't go back and think like, I admittedly have still actively has this fear of like losing everything tomorrow. I think this comes deeply entrenched in my family because my parents are both entrepreneurs. And so I've seen them on the positive side
Mhm.
continue to keep striving for more and get back up every time they're knocked down. But at the
Yeah.
same time, also this quiet fear of understanding, well, I'm comfortable, but things can go away very quickly as well. And
Yeah.
so I think that's something like, most people don't choose their values, they kind of absorb them. And I'm part of me going on this airline mission for this clarity mission is to try to help people see who the North Star, who they want to become. Like, who should I look up to? What do they optimize for? And is that the life I want?
Yeah. I heard an interview with John Morgan, Morgan and Morgan. He's a billionaire. It might be, is it the largest legal practice in the United States? I don't know. It's pretty big, right? And he did an interview where he said he still has dreams where he's driving somewhere in his car and he's just lost everything and he doesn't know where he's going. Like, okay, how many hundreds of millions do you have to have before that goes away? And he's like, it doesn't go away ever. It's like, I was like, okay, so how do we get a hold of that? Now, normally the process that you would be using here is to say, hey, I'm going to find an estate planning attorney of some sort, and then you might interview a couple of them and then engage one, and they get started. Some people just don't understand. It's a point where they feel like they're going to get ripped off or they're going to get led down because that happened to us when we first started doing our estate plan um, several years ago. We didn't choose a great person to be doing it. It was like somebody that we found off of YouTube. He was doing the podcast thing, and so while podcast can give a platform, it doesn't necessarily guarantee credibility. And so I felt like we had to redo it again with a different advisor, a different set of attorneys. And then that kind of burned us a little bit. And so we're a little dragging our feet on the redo, even though we're to the point where I'm like, I think this needs to be redone. So normally that would be the path. Give me a customer journey when they're decide through HeirLight that, okay, I want to do this, but I'm not ready to talk to an attorney yet. I don't know if I want to spend that money. I don't know if I really need this done. I think I do, but all of that. What is the different entrance into your ecosystem than what they would normally be finding with just looking for an estate planning attorney?
Yeah. So let me first define kind of a little bit of what it is. So a will is like instructions that kick in after you die.
Mhm.
And a trust is a structure, kind of think of it like a business structure that operates while you're alive. After you're gone, the trust ends up owning the deed to your house, as well as whatever you want to put into it. And
Mhm.
it's kind of like a container that holds assets. And so Airlight doesn't do trust for a various of reasons because trust requires what the legal term is funding the trust. So if you have a trust set up, but you don't move any of your assets into the
Yep.
trust, is essentially as you've
What
learned
happened?
from personal experience. And
Yeah.
so typically what happens is if you think about the consideration of someone who's thinking about this, so you get to go to Google. Google is free and you have information out there. It requires a lot of personal effort. Or
Yeah.
you go to ChatGPT. ChatGPT is free, but it's uncertain. You don't know if you're doing it right. I would not recommend drafting anything on ChatGPT because it's not guardrail to the state laws that you would need. It doesn't understand contextual to who you are. There's just a lot of challenges there. And
Mhm.
then you can go one step up. You can go to the legal Zoom. There's a lot of services out there, and I know of many of them are really really functional. Like Trust and Will is a great resource. There's even a website called freewill.org where you can make your will for free.
Okay.
The challenge, I think, with a lot of people is that the lack of motivation to get it done. And
Yeah.
so when you sign on, you're thinking, oh, there's 65 questions that I need to do.
Mhm.
I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do
Yeah.
it next weekend when I have time. And so then you move kind of up to the highest consideration, which is like you get an attorney. So what does that look like? You ask your friends. That's what typically people do. You get a recommendation. And then, or you go on Yelp, Google, you find an attorney in your area that the vibe is good. The website looks good.
Mhm.
It's handsome, something like that, right? And once you go to that attorney, you'll have a onboarding kind of form, and that's probably 5 to 10 pages. And some of the things it'll ask you is to list out your assets, the people in your life, some relationship history. If you have a mixed family, stepkids, kids with disabilities, all these great questions, very important questions.
Yeah.
And so, what makes HeirLight different is we come in between the legal Zooms of the world and the lawyer. So you get to start for free. You don't pay until you export, until you're ready to export, really.
Oh, nice.
We are not focused on the trust. We're focused on the will, the healthcare directive, which is the document that says if you are not able to make healthcare decisions for yourself, who will be able to?
Yeah.
And so that's while you're alive. And then the power of attorney, which is basically, some people think of it as like what happens when you can't pay the bills, you're in a coma, but it can even be as simple as you and your wife or husband will go on a hiking trip to Base Camp Everest, and your cell
Okay.
phone is out for 2 days, and your
Mhm.
kids need to pay a bill or they miss a school sign up. It can be something as small as that. And
Mhm.
where when they cannot reach you, who have access to your bank account that can help you take care of that. And
Okay.
so we focus on those three documents. And the big thing is when you come in, we go through as fast as possible and onboarding to understand who you are. We try to explain to you all the terms contextual to your situation. And we discovered a very fun concept called the gift of residue, which is essentially everything else. So when you create a trust or a will, you often list out, I want my Rolex to go to this person. I want my car to go to this person, my house, and all those things. But there's this thing at the end, what we realize is that if I can know who are you considering for your gift of residue, essentially I can make a will for you pretty quickly. Because why don't I just ask you, who do you want most of your things to go to first, in what
Mm.
order, by what percentage? And then let's do all the carve outs for every little thing, all the specific things. And so we're
Yes.
trying to flip the script here so that people stop procrastinating.
Okay. So I'm seeing my siblings were kind of concerned about my dad's estate plan, and one of them called him on the phone and said, "I'm going to record this conversation," and asked him, just spent some time on the phone asking him all of these questions. And we had a voice recording of him in plain English, exactly what he wanted to have happen with his estate. And that came in so handy because then later, after he passed away, we were able to then go to return an attorney and kind of reverse engineer how all this was going to work. And we had this transcript that he was like, wow, well, I know exactly what he wanted because here it is. And he's like, I don't normally get this. And we have a similar thing that we've done over the years of many different partnerships and real estate deals. Every time you buy a big property, you have a different partnership and it needs a different set of LLCs, different operating agreements, and we need attorneys to draft all of those. So over the years, I've been able to develop a template of questions that I'm going to be asking my partners, like death, disability, divorce, all of those types of big questions, like who's putting money in, who's doing what job. We have a spreadsheet that goes with it where we can put in exactly like how much work, exactly what people are going to be doing, how much equity we're assigning for that job. I mean, it's a very systematized business partnership kit. And then what we do is we take that to our attorney, and then he's able to very quickly draft up documents, and it's way cheaper because we've done all of that legwork in plain English and spreadsheets and tables and things like that that exports. over to him. So what I'm hearing is almost like the first time we got our stuff done, they were like a will and a trust. And I honestly at that point like, oh, I didn't know we still needed a will because I thought we had a trust. And they're like, no, you still need a will and you need to go down and get it notarized by somebody, the will itself. And it's a different document, it's for a different thing. But I can imagine that if you have the documents that you're really focusing on in place, that later on, if you do need to engage an attorney, you have all of these questionnaires and things you just take them like, here's what we've already done, here's what we want in plain English. And then they're more quickly able to draft that and more affordably because you're taking less hours of their time. Is that kind of a side benefit of getting this kind of stuff taken care of? It's more complicated than what the website can handle. At least you start there and the attorney has something to work with.
Yeah, so we're actually building out two things. So one thing is if you wrote everything that you want in a paper, you can actually take a picture. It's not out yet. We're trying to fine tune this a little bit more,
Yeah.
where our app will try to understand what is on your handwritten will, and then it's going to
Oh,
ask you clarifying questions to get it done, right? So that's a fun little feature. We're also trying to do that in Spanish, right, in Mandarin, and all the languages that English is not the first language in those households, and those
mhm.
conversations tend to get put off. And then the second thing is, yeah, we do want to work with as many attorneys as possible in that if a user comes to us and say, we want to go talk to an attorney, we want to be able to actually upload that attorney's onboarding PDF and we fill out that PDF for the user based on everything that the user have told us.
Okay.
I've actually tried to negotiate this with a few law firms to say, hey, if you work with us and we export all the information to you, can you then pass on a discount to this user? Right?
Mhm.
Because one of the challenging things for us is that, yeah, I know a lot of my friends, in fact, I've been referring my friends who are using my app to help me test out the app to attorneys because
Yeah.
I look at their situation and I say, hey, look, I know you. I know we went to school together. Like, I think you should talk to an attorney for a trust because you have a home, maybe you have a vacation property at a different state or something like
Mhm.
that. So the app is not suitable for someone who's a bit more complicated. And we will flag that for our users, but we
Mhm.
can't tell our users who's paying 179 a year to keep it constantly updated to say, hey, you should talk to this attorney. It's now $5,000. That's that gap is just way too big for us to figure out what to do. And so what we'll do is what we can do best, which is like we'll try to keep everything that our user tells us that they want. And then when they're ready for an attorney, we'll export all the information out with all the context that they've ever given to us.
Okay. Yeah. And I like the discount idea because in most states, attorneys can't pay referral fees or success fees or affiliate partnerships. A lot of marketing rules about attorneys. I don't know in all states, but I think that there are some things that need to be considered there when you're going to be doing attorney referrals and what your benefit is there, and just creating a benefit in there for your customers. So, can you tell us a little bit more about kind of how this has changed you and your own estate plan? Because you have some successful businesses, you have some assets, you have access to this tool. Maybe you're a little bit more complicated. How has this changed your own passive income or your own investing, your own estate planning journey in your own future?
Yeah, so I'm probably like a typical tech millennial guy. I don't have any assets. I have probably an unhealthy amount of crypto as as an allocation portfolio. Uh, and it's not because I'm buying so much of it. It's just like
Yeah,
I dollar cost
it
average
grows.
into everything. And
Yeah.
it grows and it shrinks, and some days are better.
But
I actually have a number in mind. So I just like very clearly my money strategy is, I want to have, let's say, sub 10 million invested. I'm going to withdraw 4 to 5% depending on a year. I want to
mhm,
live like a very comfortable after tax lifestyle that is probably landing around the 250 to 250K, depending, just on the economy.
inflation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it also depends on where I live. Right now I'm in LA, and LA 250K in LA like feels kind of not enough. So
Mhm.
and this is after tax even. And so it depends on where I live. If I end up living somewhere else, maybe in Europe, then I probably don't need to save up as much to live a very comfortable life, and the lifestyle will be very different. And so just knowing myself, I don't like managing properties. And so again, back
Me
to like
neither.
self. Yeah, and so I don't even wanna manage the person who's managing my property because I wanna hear about everything that's going on, and so just being self-aware, like the game that I am playing today,
Mhm.
is to get to a certain amount on my portfolio, and then I'll just live off the yield if I can. But life changes, right? Like, I think as I get married and have kids, I'm pretty sure my outlook on having a home is gonna change,
Yeah.
you know? So, I think that's when the combined values of my partner and I is gonna make the financial decisions a little bit different.
Yeah. I know I saw a presentation several years ago, an attorney, he's now retired, estate planning attorney, who specialized in like complicated real estate investor portfolios. And he had this great way of looking at it where he started out with like broke bro, where he was just out of college, lots of student debt, no properties, not married. And he used this character throughout the presentation to follow him along and show like what kind of legal and mostly legal documents, but insurance as well that he would need in order to be able to fit like his new position in life. When he ends up like this wealthy business owner with several homes and a bunch of kids and the more complicated structures that you're going to need and the stages, the funnel, I guess, in between that. And I thought that was really helpful for me to see like, okay, we don't have to do all of this all at once. A tool like yours, you start out with a couple of key documents that you specialize in, and then kind of looking at like, okay, where are we going from here? Like you said, it can change and it's changed for us, like, I thought we did such a good job on it the first time around, and then just to watch it age like that, and it was like, "Okay, you know what? Every so often, this needs to be redone." And now I'm turned into the procrastinator again, after I thought I learned from with my dad, and this was gonna not be this way the second time around, but yeah, it's something that we just have to keep on top of, and people procrastinate. So tools like yours would make it easier, I think, at least to this.
Yeah.
So,
And you know,
so
selfishly, like for me, this journey has been incredible because I'm building HeirLight, I talk to my
Mhm.
parents about their dreams and their wishes and things that I just typically wouldn't have sat down and be like,
No.
"Hey, what are they bucket lists?" You know, what were you like when before you had kids? Because I'm the oldest of four, so they spent
Mhm.
the better half like 25 years just raising us.
Yeah.
And one thing that I realized is that my mom had always wanted to go to Salzburg to see the place where The Sound of Music was filmed.
Yeah.
And so around July last year, I told my mom and dad, I said, "Hey, what are we waiting for? You know, you have the means and we don't have to do something crazy. Let's just fly over and go check out the place." And so somewhere around, I think July 30th, we flew into Vienna. We drove over to Salzburg. And at some point, my mom looked at me and said, as this little girl who grew up in Malaysia in this small town called Ipoh, where nobody has ever heard of, it's just like unbelievable that I'm standing here where Marie got married in that movie, right?
Yes.
And she's like, that this is just a dream. This is why you work so hard. This is why you sacrifice and take risks so that you can share these memories with the people that you love. And so for me, building Airlight is all worth it because I've had those conversations with my parents and selfishly, I've like got the most out of it already. And so I'm hoping to just like bring this message out to the world and give people as many reminders as possible as to the things that really matter. I I think in my 20s when I was building the first startups, I was definitely chasing those TechCrunch articles of like X
Yeah.
founder raised X amount of dollars and X valuation. And I think at this point, I'm very grateful to have found a different channel that's building out a business that is just who I am.
Yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful story, and a kind of that full circle moment. How long after that trip was it that your mom passed away?
8 days.
What? Oh,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think I've always been close to her. I know I've always been close to her. I know her wishes. I know what she wanted in life. And I just wish if I had any wish to go back a few years, that she would start living more,
yeah.
that she would do more. And the other beautiful thing that happened since then is people often text me or text our family. We just received a bunch of like holiday cards. And I realized how much and how many people my mom has helped just by way
Yes.
of giving advice, sometimes money, and just like that. And it's such a beautiful thing. And so I think if she had clarity earlier in her life, she would have lived even fuller. She probably would have
Yes.
given more away.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. This is exactly the point. It's like the more you feel stabilized and clarity is love. And then you can start saying, I have enough to give away. I have enough. I know I have time to give away because I'm not locked into a job that I didn't realize I didn't really need to work as many years as I thought I did. The situation actually may be better, but people don't want to look at it because it could be worse. Right. And so, but what you're talking about, that clarity allows us to really live the adventure, have funded on our hard work because the income may be passive when your money's working, but you made it in the first place. So it's like the hard work that you did to earn that money, to put it to work, to build businesses and become an investor. Um, yeah, we want to be able to enjoy that. And I will just say before we wrap up, sometimes people are looking for mission-driven founders to invest in so that we can put our money to work to build your vision. And I know that investors do bring on like a layer of management and loss of decision making that you're wise to avoid as long as possible. But at the same time, it's almost like we need great mission-driven people to invest our capital with. And so when you do come around to that point, sharing this kind of stuff will definitely help you to find the right investors who share your mission. So I appreciate you sharing with me and with our listener.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And then people get a hold of you, Jermaine at HeirLight.com, HeirLight.com, and reach out if you want to talk to Jermaine about getting set up on the platform or to get on his someday maybe investors waitlist. And if you want to get a hold of me, investwithemma.com. It just puts you straight into my calendar. And I have no call to action. I got no agenda. I just like to talk about this kind of stuff. I feel like good opportunities come out of networking, and networking is something I feel very committed to because all of my best opportunities have come out of just people that I've met either through the show, through my local networking, whatever it is. Like, don't underestimate the power of networking. So thank you for networking with me today, Jermaine, and letting all my listeners uh, jump in on the conversation to see how all this stuff works.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. I will see y'all next week for our next passive income adventure.